Yeah, we're fancy here at Fighting Chance Live. I am Kevin Tompkins. We've got Gary Haddow and our special guest, Jake Trowbridge. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing so fantastic. How are you guys?
Absolutely awesome.
I'm doing amazing. I'm just wondering how many people just looked at their phone like when they're going to listen to this on a stream or wherever. They're going to be like, what the hell is this podcast? And oh, this is them.
I like to keep the 4 people that intently watch us on our toes. I like to make them just think about everything and just their existence in life. But anyway, so we have some breaking news here. Adam Schefter just tweeted out about
dropped a bomb.
He did. He did drop a bomb. That Leonard Fournette has signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I don't have anything to pour out on my nice carpet here, but I will for Ronald Jones. Feel bad for the guy, but it's a business. Bruce Arians likes reclamation projects. Let's go to Jake. What do you think? Initial thoughts about Lenny Fournette?
I'm bummed. That's my initial thoughts. I'm bummed because I'm a guy who reluctantly finally got Ronald Jones on one of my teams last week. I was like, I'll trade a second for Ronald Jones. At this point, you'd be crazy not to. Why not just roll the dice on the guy?
Yeah.
Which is apparently why not. Because there are other guys on the market now that can come in and steal that. I'm very interested. I don't know. Does Leonard Fournette come in week 1 and just crush? Is there a split that happens between the two of them? I don't know. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, it's so confusing. Part of me is like, man, this is going to make Fournette be a top 15 back and potentially better than he was just because the offense and everything's going to be so much better and their line is rebuilt. I mean, and you get to be with Tom fucking Brady. Like, it's going to be so different. And we obviously know he can pass catch, which, the debate was out with Ronald Jones. Oh, man, I have no idea. When I first heard it, I was like, hell yeah, like the guy who won my league last year in my main league, he has Fournette. That's good. He just took a hit. And then I was like, wait, did he?
Well, I will say this. That's a pretty optimal landing spot when you think about there's only a few teams that could use a back like that. I would have put the Chiefs in there. My dark horse was the Lions. With Swift being hurt and Kerryon Johnson, they're probably not too sure about depth behind him, kind of weak. But Tampa Bay, it just puts a wrench into pretty much a confusing backfield at that point because you have so many guys there. You have right now you're looking at 5 guys on that roster. You probably not keeping all 5, probably go into 4. So could see LaShawn McCoy as maybe an odd man out. But yeah, this was a move. That's all you can pretty much say about that.
And got him cheap. I think it's max out at $3.5 million. I don't think that's anything too bad, especially for someone of his caliber with the amount of touches that we seem to think he can handle. I do still believe that Rojo is someone that, especially if you have drafts coming up this weekend, still get him. He's going to be super late. You never know what the heck's going to happen. You never know. These deals can fall through. I mean, it's not as if Leonard Fournette's a picture of health. We know he's had the ankle issues, soft tissue injuries. So let's just see. And if he can't adapt to the system and if Brady doesn't like him, how much is he going to see the field? So we'll see.
Yeah, crazy shit. So now that we got through the breaking news, Jake, buddy, tell us where we can find you on the World Wide Web here.
Oh, I'm all over the World Wide Webs, you guys. I'm everywhere that you would ever want to be on the webs. No, you can find our podcast. I'm co-host with Dustin Lunt of the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast. You can find us on the iTunes, on the Stitchers, the Podbeans. I like throwing S's on the ends of these names like an old person, I guess. But you can find us anywhere, or you can find us on Twitter at Drinking Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Jake Trowbridge. I'm doing some writing and editing still for Rotoballer, so especially during redraft, you can find me there as well.
Very cool, man. I love following you on Twitter. Just to say, I feel like you and I, we won't get into it, but we have very similar views. We'll go with that. So I definitely appreciate it. You say the stuff that I, for some reason, just don't say because I don't. But,
we have a kindred. We do. We have like a kindred spirit. We have a bond.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we
And
have
Kevin
a bond.
sucks, so no.
Whoa. Now we have a kindred bond too, because I've been dealing with weeks here with 49ers fans. So now we got another Packer guy in the house. So fuck your 49ers.
I just took Rodgers
In no
as my
uncertain
QB3 yesterday. So my third
What's that?
quarterback. I just took Rodgers as my QB3 in the Fighting Chance auction league, kind of for $2. So I was like, all right, I'll take him as my third in a super flex.
Yeah, well, at that price, why the hell not? So,
I
you
burned all my
want
Niners stuff. I'm now a Packers fan.
That was easy.
Interrupted you.
Yeah, we should be taking this across the country with a tour, just getting people to do that. Kevin,
traveling
man.
roadshow.
All right, I derailed. That's enough. I'm sorry.
There's never derailed when you're talking about adding more Packer fans. Never.
All right. So what are we doing today? Yeah. All right. So we're going to actually talk about breakouts. We got the season coming up next week. It's the busiest draft weekend, I guess now. I always think it's the second weekend, but this weekend coming up. So we're going to talk about breakout players, but I have a question for the two of you. And how do you define a breakout? The reason I ask is that we have sleepers, we have values, we have MVP candidates, and we have breakouts. So what to you is a breakout? And I think that it's very important to define that because our players that we're about to discuss, fit within that category. So Jake, how do you define a breakout?
My definition of a breakout is pretty loose because I do like to try and stay vague with some of these terms because sometimes I do feel like as a community, sometimes we really pigeonhole these terms and we give them so narrow that it seems tough for people to actually define. Yeah. So vaguely, I like to say that a breakout is going to be somebody who smashes their ADP of where you draft them. Yeah. I know that there's a question about whether a rookie or somebody could be considered. I think that they absolutely can be. It just can't be somebody who has done it before. So if they have really smashed their ADP prior, then to me, they're no longer a breakout candidate. Maybe they're a re-breakout candidate. Yeah. But those are my loose terms.
I appreciate that last part because when we talk about the QBs, I waffled between three different guys. And one of them was Josh Allen because I feel like he's going to break out. But because he had already broken out, I felt like I couldn't do it. So, Kevin, how do you define it? Anything different there?
I mean, I just look at guys that, if I'm trying to forecast next year, guys that can, jump up a tier or two, the guys that you can see their ADP go up a round or two, or, depending on the position, quarterbacks certainly go up a couple rounds, running backs, couple or round or two here and there. But yeah, I'm just looking for those guys that, I can envision. And we'll talk about, maybe some of those fourth or fifth round wide receivers, maybe jumping up into the third round conversation, even the second round conversation next year.
Definitely makes sense. It's funny because looking at the guys we're going to discuss, I think all of us took a much later approach in drafts, guys that could really jump up, half a dozen rounds, if not going from like the 12th to like the second type thing. So I'm really excited to hear Jake's. I gotta hear it. You're the first person I've seen throw anything positive his way. So let's do it, man. I'm ready.
We're just gonna jump right in.
We're gonna jump in,
aren't we, man? Look, I hesitate to almost say it, but when I'm looking through ADP, the first thing that I naturally do with quarterbacks, especially, is I look at guys who are not going to be in the top 12. So there's your easy break off. Yeah. And then I look at guys who are in maybe the next set of 12. And I say, well, is there anybody here who I look at them like, oh, they're so misvalued in ADP that I have to call attention to them. And for me, for whatever reason this year, I didn't see that sticking out to me. So then I had to go deeper down the list. And you have to go real deep down the list to get to my guy here. You have to scroll and scroll and scroll. You have to click next on your browser and then get to the next list. But it's Dwayne Haskins for me for quarterback. And the reasoning, though, is super simple. One, training camp has gone well for Dwayne. There was waffling early on in this offseason about guys who could maybe even lose their job at quarterback position. And Dwayne Haskins was maybe prospect number one for that. Like, Oh,
Yeah.
and then Alex Smith got healthy, and then the world freaked out because if Alex Smith is coming back, there's no way Dwayne Haskins is hanging on to his job. And then, Kyle Allen knows the system. He knows the coaching staff there, a holdover from Carolina. So he had all these knocks going against him. And obviously last year was bad. It was pretty bad for Dwayne Haskins. But obviously he got tossed into a melee. It was bad. You can't expect not anybody. You can't expect most quarterbacks in his situation to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't really a knock against him for me, nor was it obviously a highlight. It was just, well, he got some game time. But then the next thing truly was looking at him with the coaching staff. So he gets Ron Rivera and he gets Scott Turner there. Yep. And their pedigrees are a little bit reliant on individual players. It's not as if they've had a slew of guys come through that they have turned and made into top tier guys.
Yeah.
And obviously, Dwayne Haskins, a lot different type of quarterback than Cam Newton is. But I just look at the coaching and the scheming that was going on last year for him, and it was so bad that it explains his ADP, but it also, to me, says there's no way that he touches this ADP. He has to be at least a few spots above. And I think he was QB 32, if I'm not mistaken, in Fantasy Pros ADP. There's no way. I mean, there's no way that he sniffs that. I think he's a top 20 guy this year. I'm a little bit nervous about his weapons, I suppose, but he does have the most important weapon there, which is Terry McLaurin. So the connection in camp has been fantastic between those two. That's enough for me. I love a guy like Gibson in there to give him a little bit of leeway too. With Adrian Peterson, yeah, man. I mean, what are you going to do with Adrian Peterson there? It's not as if he changes the defense enough to give you breathing room, and it's not as if he helps the quarterback enough to make any sort of value. So last year for me was just a perfect storm of bad things for Dwayne Haskins. I said really early this offseason, it was like April, and I was drunk probably, but I was like, hey, Ron Rivera and Scott Turner could turn this guy into a top 16 quarterback if everything goes really well this year. I'm not saying that that's a lock, but there's no way that the dude is not more valuable next year, in my opinion, than he is right now, which is valueless.
Yeah. I can't buy into the top 20 because just listing the guys that are 21 to 30, I can buy 25 because there's Minshew, Cousins. So there's Burrow, Minshew, Cousins, Garoppolo, Rivers. Then I could see Haskins getting there. Then there's Locke, Bridgewater, Carr, Darnold, Tyrod. And then below him are Fitz and Foles. And then they're both their backups. Yeah, man, I get it. I do get it that there's value to be had. And I think especially in a super flex, in a Scott Fish, he's probably going to be your QB3, I would imagine, in a super flex. But you can wait and just get two of those guys right there in combo with someone, and all of a sudden, like, you have something. Well, on the flip side, like, he's not going to do any worse. Downside of, like, really only barely scratching 200 yards in a given week and a couple touchdowns. But like you said, Terry McLaurin's just going to do better and better, and Steven Sims showed up. So, hey, let's see. My main concern, disregarding like Haskins and the offense, is actually that their defense should be pretty good. Well, their front seven. Yeah, their line should be good. Yeah, let me rephrase that. And so it'll be interesting to see if they really do try and go with a ground and pound approach. But at the same time, like, I don't know if they're built that way whatsoever because of their line, because it's Adrian Peterson, and then it's all these other guys that aren't between the tackle guys. So let's do it, man. Let's shake those dice and see what happens, man.
I love the I just can't get over him as, like, you're talking like in redraft. Am I going to pick him up? No. Like in one quarterback redraft? No, of course I'm going to touch Haskins there. There's no reason to. But if you're looking at, and just historically, I do really like what the offenses have been under Rivera. I like that while there was a healthy Cam there, what the balance was in that offense. But I also do like they did let Cam throw it when that was the thing, So obviously square peg round hole a little bit with Cam and Rivera back in those days because he was a running quarterback.
Yeah.
Dwayne Haskins is not a running quarterback, so you don't have that floor, which is a real bummer. But I like the idea and the upshot with him, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you believe in Terry McLaurin, obviously he's going to be the one getting in the ball. So you gotta hope for something, just based on that. But Sims and Gibson, should make his life a lot easier, at least on dump offs and, design plays like that. The offensive line's not great. I mean, Trent Williams is gone. He's, been long gone. So
where'd he go?
Yeah, okay. We're not going to touch that one, but yeah. So, I mean, there's some work to be done on the line there, but at least there's a glimmer of hope because you got to figure maybe Gandy Golden can start to see the field more.
Yeah.
Certainly, right now they got a placeholder in Dontrell Inman. I mean, yeah. So
Logan Thomas. I mean, deep sleeper at tight end.
Yeah, I'm
it's gonna get dump offs, dude. We know what's gonna happen.
I'm fully asleep on Logan Thomas. And I'm not waking up.
Fair enough.
So, all right.
Kevin.
So, you're going to me. All right.
Yeah,
so
we'll go with you.
We'll go with Danny Dimes as my breakout. Now we're talking about a guy who is the most accurate passer last year on balls thrown with over 20 air yards. We're talking about a guy who finishes quarterback 11 in points per game among quarterbacks who played 8+ games. He's got a bit of a built-in floor, 20 rushing yards or more in 7 games. I mean, if you look, you're trying to forecast for this year. The first 3 games are absolutely brutal. You're talking Pittsburgh at Chicago, San Francisco. I mean, find me any quarterback outside of the elite that's going to make it through those 3, with solid numbers. You'd be hard pressed to do that. But it does open up considerably when you start getting into the division. But I see a quarterback with Daniel Jones that provides a bit of a floor. Very accurate in those high leverage throws that you want in fantasy. Now he's got, weapons galore. He's got Barkley, Ingram, Slayton, Shepard, Tate. He hasn't played with all 5 of those guys healthy. Fingers crossed he can play with those guys healthy, because if he can, they're going to score some points. They're going to be able to move the ball. And the defense is terrible. So they could get into quite a bit of a shootout, with teams, especially in their division, that don't have great defenses. So with Jason Garrett's now, offensive coordinator, he obviously had Dak Prescott, and, under his tutelage, he had Noberson, and a quarterback 11 finish the last 4 seasons. So I like that to kind of translate a bit over to Daniel Jones. And if he can be a fringe quarterback 1, and maybe more, because there's a lot of room to grow with him. I could see him. It's totally not out of the realm of possibility. He could finish as a quarterback 7, 8, 9.
Completely. It's crazy. He missed 4 games. One of them doesn't count because he was there, but it was like week 1 and he only threw 4 passes. And he still got 3,000 yards and 24 touchdowns in 12 games. And to me, that just is like, man, that would put him on pace for 4,030 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And that's in a rookie season with never having all of his skill position players on the field at this. And he has the rushing floor. I love this pick. Like, I definitely I don't know. He strikes me as the type of guy that we're going to get 350, potentially 400 yards on the ground. That's someone you want, is to have that floor and the touchdown upside. Obviously, if you have a heavy interception laden, like -2, -3, or Scott Fishbowl -4 and 6, that changes things. But
he's not going to fumble the ball 18 times either, like he did last year. I mean, that's just an inconceivable number.
Times? That's insane.
18 fumbles, yeah.
I didn't even see that.
A lot.
Crazy. God, that's 30 turnovers. Oh my God. But whatever. So I love the pick, and obviously I love all their players. I just think that almost every person on that team is a value, and some will even say like Barkley's a value in the fact that, some people think he's better. He should be the 101.
His receivers there, it's crazy how much that people sleep on the every receiver that's there. I mean, Golden, Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton feels like has the most juice out of any of those guys, which I understand because he was far and away the most exciting guy to watch last year. And obviously those big touchdown games really elevated him. But I just don't, it's weird. Like those guys, they have great floors and a good amount of upside in that offense. Yeah. So he just has a really good group around him. Fingers crossed for Evan Ingram this year, man. And if that goes a full 16, yeah, I love Daniel Jones. I remember when Daniel Jones and Joe Burrow were back to back in ADP, and it just felt like, why? Like, why is that happening? Why is Daniel Jones not a few spots above him at least? Now that's kind of been corrected, thankfully.
Yeah, totally agree.
And you look how cheap and his those weapons. You know, we're talking about Tate and Shepard, guys you can get in the double-digit rounds. Slayton's going about what 7th, 8th round, maybe slips into the 9th. I mean, those weapons are a steal. Ingram you could probably get 7th round or so. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can, just create in a great offensive atmosphere. That got with weapons that you're just everybody's sleeping on because they're not sexy names other than maybe Darius Slayton.
And a terrible defense, even though they did just sign Logan Ryan, but it's still a terrible defense, probably one of the worst in the NFL. So, I mean, he's just going to have to keep throwing. He very much reminds me of a more touchdown version of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, I feel like the yardage type stuff is there. Like Daniel Jones is like the dark horse to like lead the NFL in yardage, right? Because he's going to have to throw like 300 plus a game. And then so if he can get the touchdowns, which they were obviously there. I mean, he had 2 4-touchdown games and a 5-touchdown game. Like that's crazy. So a lot of upside.
Sure.
All right. So move on to mine. I'm going to obviously default to say like my honest pick here is Jimmy G, right? But I talk about him every episode. You guys can listen to anything I've ever said publicly in the last like 6 months, and more than 60% of the time I'm somehow talking about Jimmy G. So dark horse, MVP, all that stuff, team Yak Master. I think anybody that shits on him doesn't understand what it takes to get lots of yardage, and that's have really fast guys who know, and one of the best, if not the best schemer in the game, and Kyle Shanahan. So my actual guy that I ended up defaulting to after that is Joe Burrow. I'm not really someone that's going to go with a rookie quarterback ever, but his last year, he really just had such an amazing year, even if it was college, but 60 touchdowns, 5,600 yards. He's added 400 yards on the ground or just under 400 yards the last couple of years. It's not as if he's transitioning to a bad offense. Like the offensive line is potentially an issue, but they did bring in, they now have Jonah Williams back healthy, who was their 1st round pick last year towards ACL. Dude was amazing. I think I remember the stat in college. He never once allowed a sack. I think I'm right in saying that. If that's off, I apologize. It might've been last season or the season before, whatever. But he gets AJ Green potentially for as many games as he can. He gets Tyler Boyd in the slot, who like, hey, Justin Jefferson, look what he just did. He gets T. Higgins, that's going to be coming in as their rookie. They took at pick 33 in the draft, so they have high hopes for him. They have a gigantic man in Auden Tate, who seems like he's going to be their red zone threat. He's like 6'4", 6'5". And then, they have Drew Sample and they have CJ Uzomah, right? Yeah. At tight end. And that's not to say they have Mixon and they potentially have, Gio or Travion Williams, whoever. So everybody there can catch passes. They have people at different levels of the offense, going down the field. And so I think he's going to do better than Baker did in Baker's rookie year. And Baker tied the record for, I think, 24. We had this conversation on like one of our first pods, 24 touchdowns. It would not shock me if he did better than that, 27-ish, 28 touchdowns, and getting somewhere probably just shy of 4,000 yards, around 4,000. But like he's going right now in Fantasy Pros ECR. What did I say? He was at QB 20. He's behind Tannehill. He's in front of Minshew, and obviously Jimmy G is right behind him. So I think he has a lot of room. He could pass Tannehill, Mayfield. He could pass Goff. And he could get into that Daniel Jones range. It's smart that He is no longer going next to Daniel Jones, but that's a byproduct of Newton going to the Pats and Roethlisberger getting healthy. So I think it makes sense, and I'm just excited to see it. So
I think I was way too down on him earlier in this offseason based on the weird COVID offseason and just like, I don't want to trust any rookies. Like rookie running back, sure, but like anybody else, I'm just like, I don't want to trust you right now. Yeah. And I fully expected both John Ross and AJ Green to be hurt by now. So the fact that they are not is boding really well for him.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot to even say him. Man, that's another red zone weapon with a burner. Man, it's going to be fun. So we'll see. Limit expectations. It's a rookie, but he seems. I think it was Charles Robinson from Yahoo was on the Ringer NFL show. This was months ago and said he and a lot of other people had said that in reviewing Joe Burrow's last year that he was probably the most NFL ready quarterback that they had ever seen. So if that is true, and those are media folks, but if that's true, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, and there's going to be volume there. I mean, you look at a guy, in that offense with Andy Dalton last year. He was the 12th, had the 12th most expected fantasy points in that offense, despite missing 3 games. I mean, they threw the ball at least 36 times in 11 of 13 games, 3 games with over 50 attempts. So, you can pretty much expect more of the same in that offense. Yeah. With bad defense, you look to that and you look at just garbage time. It's going to be there. They're just going to be throw. And then, the great thing about Burrow is he's got some, a little bit of a run to him. So you're picking up some floor too. So, that combination, that's going to be very fantasy friendly for a long time. This year, I mean, I don't see why he can't be a fringe quarterback one. He can certainly sneak up on people. And I don't know what the Vegas line is for touchdowns for the season, but if maybe it's
we looked at it and it was like 24.5.
Really?
I think it was somewhere like that. And we were like, wow, like that.
I figured it'd be around there because of the record. So, I'd certainly take the over. I don't know if he gets 30, but with a bunch of yards, 27 touchdowns. Yeah, that's going to get you into the QB1 fringe.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin, why don't you take us into our running backs and we'll stick with the rookie.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about him an absolute ton this offseason after the Majouks showed me the light on Zach Moss. I mean, we've pretty much said what we can say about Zach Moss, but you're looking at a guy now, his ADP is starting to get close to Singletary's to where it's still a value, but you're talking about Moss. He's going to get those high leverage touches. He's going to get the goal line work. Brandon Beane has said as such. Now the potentially getting passing game work too. That's gonna take a lot of work away from Devin Singletary. We know if the Bills were super happy with Devin Singletary, they wouldn't have brought Zach Moss in. So, either he's going to get a lion's share of that work. Those touches are going to bring up Moss's price. It already has an ADP, and I'm surprised that with Brandon Beane saying that a month or two ago, that the price hasn't really corrected until now. You're still getting him a month ago in the 10th round, and now you're starting to see him climbing into the 8th, into the 9th round. Among some of the lesser wide receivers there in that tier. So I'm still loving Zach Moss. I'll still draft him wherever I can. As a 0 RB truther, I'm happy to get Zach Moss as my first running back. I think he's going to absolutely smash in Buffalo this year. And I don't see Devin Singletary taking anything more than just between the 20s touches. I think it's really Zach Moss's backfield at some point in the season.
Jake?
Man, it's hard to argue against any of that. I have also been very slow to come around on Zach Moss, and I also came around because of the Majouks. I feel like most around here have, because like they were fervent in their love for him early and often. And it took a while to just rub off and like understand. When he came in, I just kept thinking, all right, he's got the Frank Gore role.
Yep.
Oh, right. He's Legion's better than Frank Gore will be in that same role. So if he has that role, you're not just duplicating stats here. You are taking a guy who is more suited for it anyways and giving him those touches. So I'm really excited about that. Honestly, when I saw his name pop up on this, I was really excited to hear you talk about him.
Yeah, he's definitely just kind of opened my eyes, and being from upstate New York and just rolling my eyes every time the Buffalo Bills are mentioned. Now I don't. It's an exciting team to watch now, and I never thought I'd ever say that in my life. Wanting to watch the Buffalo Bills, and part of me maybe wishing I was back in Syracuse so I could see them. I'm not getting Bills games in North Dakota now, so. Yeah, it's what an age we live in.
What a world!
I know.
What a world full of internet possibilities
and wonderment.
Could I talk about my dumpster dive of a name at running back here?
Of course.
Okay. So I feel like this is going to be a trend throughout the show, but again, like when I keep looking at these guys who I feel are the most primed to be a breakout, it's guys that are going really late. Jerick McKinnon, holy hell, that guy is still going really late. The offseason buzz, for whatever reason, has really kept it a low hum. The news and notes have been there for him. It's not that they haven't. It's just that I don't know that we've all been listening to what everybody's been saying, and especially what his quarterback's been saying. Right. When Jimmy Garoppolo is talking about this guy who runs routes better and more efficiently than he's seen anybody in his backfield ever run them, and that he does look like a natural wide receiver and a natural pass catcher. And now you factor in the Gary, how many injuries to this wide receiving core?
Dude, they're about to all be healthy. Just Shanahan said he expects Ayuk and Debo back, but Jalen Hurd, he's done for the season. R.I.P.
Do they? So these guys. Here's my question, I guess. So if Debo comes back and Ayuk comes back healthy, because I was already factoring, I figured McKinnon would still be very, very well utilized in this offense, even with both of those healthy. Even I figured if Hurd was in there too, he might cut into some of the actual rushing attempts for him. But in terms of his receiving work, I still figured that he would get heavily utilized. Ayuk as a rookie wide receiver, I'm not terrified of him coming back even still. Debo, I'm actually a little bit nervous about what he'll cut into here. But his metric, I know it's stupid to fall back on metrics for a guy who's been in the league for as long as Jerick McKinnon's been in the league for. But when you figure out what his utilization was in Minnesota, and then obviously the injury years here that we didn't get to see when they brought him on in San Francisco, and what they envisioned him being, which was very clearly he's going to be the pass catching running back on that team. It's not a knock against Raheem Mostert. It's not a knock against, it might be a knock against Tevin Coleman, but it's not a knock against Raheem Mostert that they can't do it. It's just that there's no reason for them to when you have Jerick McKinnon there and healthy. Yeah. Right. The dude's metrics are wild. His receiving stats are fantastic, even in the limited usage he got in Minnesota. I'm so excited for him to see. I just think his ADP it's like disrespectful right now, but not intentionally so. It's just people thinking, well, he'll be injured, so why even bother, looking at this guy right now?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously completely agree. They gave him a 4-year, $30 million contract. When they brought him in, they were bringing him in for a specific reason. One of the reasons I'm so high on the Niners, just besides my deep-seated love for them, is Kyle Shanahan's finally getting the group that he has always envisioned getting. He gets Ayuk in the first, and he gets McKinnon back. Plus, he does have Mostert and Coleman. And I think that they're just going to scheme up McKinnon. Something that always caught me was Trent Williams said that he thinks so far MVP of training camp has been Jerick McKinnon. And like, that just seems like an interesting thing for Trent Williams to say. He's a left tackle, and to call out not even their starting running back, but to call out someone else who has come off of 2 ACL back-to-back injuries and is still able to come out there and look like this. And, you know, last time we really saw him was in a Vikings jersey, and he was out there just catching pass after pass after pass and doing pretty. So I 100% agree that he is going to be. It'll just be curious to see how high up he can get. Like, my question to you would be Nyheim Hines or Jerick McKinnon. Who would you rather have? I don't have their ADP up right now, but just let's just say that they were equal, even though McKinnon's going much later.
Yeah, I would say it's tough because I wasn't expecting the buzz to come out for Hines that has come out from camp 2. And I should say, it's not that I'm just sitting here, Googling over all of these camp notes that come out, but these guys that you don't expect to hear these things about.
Yeah.
One thing when you expect to hear it all about him, I didn't expect to hear all this about Nyheim Hines, and he's been really a focal point.
Yeah.
And just the sheer volume of dump offs that are available in Indy would lead me to, I'd lean probably Hines for the safety of the volume that he's going to receive. I don't know what we can trust for McKinnon's volume. I think he'll be insanely more efficient than Hines will ever be as a pass catcher. It's just when I'm looking at drafting a guy, do I go upside or do I go safety? So that would be my deciding factor just based on how my roster construction is. But safety-wise, it's Hines for me still.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's probably Hines for me too, but we know he has a defined role. And Jake, are you trying to tell me that you don't have like a tweet deck for Roto World blurbs? Like, you don't just see them generate in real time and just scroll up and down like when Denny Carter writes one, you're just loving life.
I can't handle the amount of news that I get from fantasy football already on my Twitter sphere. No, I will never ever have that.
Oh man, that's for people that are much smarter than me to be able to figure that one out. But yeah, I mean, as far as the two players in a vacuum, I mean, if you give me McKinnon for everything Jake said, he's going to be insanely more efficient, but we know Hines has a defined role. We got to see what McKinnon can bring to the offense if they're going to, really trot him out there. And, obviously Shanahan's going to be working in multiple backs. So I'll just take Hines for the safety, but there's constructions where, if I have enough floor, I have, taking running backs late, McKinnon's a guy that I'm targeting, late. He just falls with like the Darrell Williams and the Joshua Kellys, where he can just get him he's a free square. I mean, that could certainly just pay dividends late if you just have him stashed away.
Because one of those guys has top 15 upside in their offense. The other 100% does not. And if he, for some reason, becomes that guy, as we've known 49ers to do, then all of a sudden you have that upside. I mean, that sounds outlandish to say, but really there's a chance for that. Hines, no possible way does he ever, come close to that.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I am like debating on if I want to pivot right here, but whatever. So Matt Breida is my guy. I think the breakout solely it's just because he's finally going to get the chance for it. But the difficulty is whether or not he's going to be injured or not, because he has gotten injured somewhat frequently, even though he tends to play through a lot of stuff. He was on the Niners last year and then got traded to the Dolphins, and it's him and Jordan Howard. Breida is going as the RB35. He's going a little bit higher than I think even I'm usually comfortable taking him. But the fact that, he has the opportunity to be in a Dolphins offense that I think will be better than people tend to scoff at. The question will be about the touchdowns. I mean, I think Breida is definitely going to be their pass catching back because Howard can't really catch for anything. Howard's probably going to be their goal line guy, but Breida, when he is in the open field, I mean, he last year was the fastest player and the fastest ball carrier in the NFL. I think he got over 22 miles an hour on one of his long runs. And like, that's crazy. Like you would always think, oh, it's going to be Tyreek or something, but no, it was actually Matt Breida. So he's finally going to get the chance. He's not going to be stuck in a full like 3-back rotation, and we'll just see if he can stay healthy. Then I think he'll surprise some people. If you can get him as your RB4, RB5, and you're potentially getting, mid to back RB2 value, I definitely think that's worthwhile. And, who knows, like maybe this is the year where I can't even say it with a straight face. I was going to say, like, if he does kind of the inverse of the Howard Sanders thing, not inverse, but he kind of does that. But I can't even compare it to what Sanders did last year. But I definitely am still intrigued to see what happens there. And hopefully he gets to do it. Special place in my heart, as always.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Gary, you left everybody speechless. I mean, I'm sorry we don't have more opportunity to talk about either current or former 49ers on this show, but we don't have any more. Yeah, we don't have any more time allotted to that. We use that up, so I'm so sorry. No, as far as Breida goes, I mean, I like the talent there, certainly more than Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard's going to be getting that goal line work. So hopefully Breida can just mix in. He's on the last year's contract. They're probably not going to re-sign him. So, we'll see what happens after next year. But at least this year, they'll, I would say probably a good 50-35 split in that backfield, I would say is pretty fair. And then obviously if Howard goes down, Breida's hopefully can handle that workload. But health has been an issue for both guys. So we'll see what happens, but should get the passing down work at the very least. And, Miami's going to be in most of their games. And if they're losing, then there you go. There's more screen time for Breida. So he's definitely a really good value, in that 9th, 10th round, getting a share of the Miami backfield, which, was so terrible last year. Now they had to trade for Breida, bring in Jordan Howard. It's definitely going to be improved. Miami's just improved tenfold from the last couple of years. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Me and Gary have about it might as well be the Miami Dolphins Brian Flores podcast at this point, because we talked them up just so much. But you
can change that logo to fit that in there really easily. Honestly, the more I'm looking at it, you could just slide that right in there. Nobody would even notice.
That's true. Laces out.
I will
say, just like Target's perspective, it's easily, if I'm in a standard league, which I would never be in, by the way, but hypothetically, if I was in a standard league, I would go Jordan Howard just for the rushing attempts. If I'm in a PPR, I'm going to go with Breida because the targets are going to be there for him. And like, even if you think that the whole Howard can't catch thing is overblown, then there's clearly one guy better than the other at doing that job. And as the options there, again, are just not, they're limited. And I don't know what's happening with Devontae Parker, if we've even got an update on him, but there's going to be opportunities for that guy.
Definitely.
And you have not played fantasy football if you haven't had auto-corrected Matt Breida to Brenda. It's happened to everybody. Don't say it hasn't happened, because it has to everybody.
All right. We'll move on to wide receivers. So, Jake, why don't you take us in with your wide receiver?
Sure. Once again, we're going. This is not dumpster diving, but this is definitely still getting towards the back half of your drafts here. But Paris Campbell,
the Dollar Tree diving. He is shopping for just discount, fake flowers and greeting cards and soda and Takis and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and soap that are like 70% water. It's where you find all the best items.
It is. Jake went through the Dollar Tree to find these fantasy football bargains turn breakouts so you don't have to.
Yeah, but this one smells like real tea tree oil. So I'm going to pick it up in the hopes that it's legit. I'm already apologizing to Paris Campbell for that comparison, but it's Paris Campbell who, as of right now, so there was the scare, right? Because there's the car accident, the concussion concerns, and he's back. He's fine. He's at practice, which is that's the thing. If he's good to go, then great. That was the concern for me for a bit there. But T.Y. Hilton is what I've always wanted. I've wanted him to be more like Robert Woods. Ooh, we can shoehorn a Robert Woods reference in.
Yeah, we can.
I've always wanted him in the last couple of years. It just feels like Woods kind of took his soul a little bit from him in the last couple of years, and that's why Hilton's been injured and can't stay on the field. So good for Bobby Woods. But I'm nervous about Hilton this year now. Still, the hamstring thing this early on is, it's like a death nail for a guy like him. So there's a very real world where with Rivers, who obviously there's going to be a slot role there. There's going to be a guy over the middle of the formation that he is going to hit, and it's not going to be super deep down the field. Campbell could very realistically lead the Colts in targets, and it wouldn't shock me this year at all. I know that he was very limited in what we got to see from him last year. It was unfortunate. It's not as if he came in and dominated or looked like the big kind of physical guy that I thought he would be. And I think he has an opportunity still to be that this year in this offense. And Michael Pittman, again, it's maybe just me being overly nervous about rookie wide receivers this year, but I am still nervous about everything happening there that's outside of Paris Campbell and Nyheim Hines and, maybe Jonathan Taylor. So I think it's a team that's still going to have to chuck it as far as Rivers can chuck it these days and chuck it accurately. He could throw it. Rivers could throw it far last year. He just could not throw it far accurately. So if he can really target that middle of the field, Campbell, and honestly, I thought about adding Jack Doyle as my tight end spot here, but I didn't want to double up on Colts for this. But honestly, both of those guys I could see leading in targets, maybe even touchdowns, honestly.
Damn.
Yeah, those are two of my guys, Paris Campbell and Jack Doyle, just because we know Rivers has always thrived with a target in the middle of the field. He's had Hunter Henry, he's had Antonio Gates, he's had Keenan Allen, all those guys that he's just absolutely peppered and made them into PPR, stars. And there's gonna be a guy in that Colts offense, now that Rivers is getting older. Yeah, to your point, maybe the deep ball is not going to be as big of an offensive thing to work around. They've got Michael Pittman there, who he hasn't had the best of camp. We don't know all we have in him, though he does kind of fit the Vincent Jackson like mold that he's had for so long, going back to San Diego. But Paris Campbell in the middle, absolutely 100%. He does have a path to being the leader in targets in Indianapolis. There's no question about it. We didn't see a lot of him, but that's why that's where his ADP. Why his ADP is where it's at, because people have just fallen asleep on Paris Campbell. I mean, that guy, if you can get him in the 12th round and you're talking about potentially 110 targets. I mean, when you're looking at value, he is one of the front runners as far as double-digit round value is Paris Campbell. Absolutely 100% on board with everything you said, Jake.
Here. Agreed. I'm going to jump in with mine, sticking with kind of another younger wide receiver. So I know right now has been deemed Bryan Edwards' season now that Tyrell Williams is on IR. I will say that I've been on this bandwagon since the draft. I'm not a big college guy, but I happen to kind of just look at highlights of some of the different players that were wide receivers in the draft, and he just jumped off the page. He got injured pretty close towards the end of the season and ended up just kind of falling in drafts. And he got taken in the third round by the Raiders. He's my most owned player, and I've done like 15, 20 drafts. And I think I've had him in 90% of my leagues just because he's going free. He's wide receiver like 83 or something on Fantasy Pros right now. And honestly, I just see it as he is the cheapest wide receiver one available. I think he will be the one. I think Ruggs will be the two. That's the speedster. I don't know. Ruggs doesn't do it for me in fantasy. Then there's Hunter Renfrow, who's going to be the slot guy. Darren Waller kind of moving all over. And while Darren Waller might be the number one receiving target or receptions target, I think that at least the wide receiver one is going to go to Bryan Edwards. And honestly, like the greatest stuff that happened to me this offseason is the amount of glowing stuff out of camp about Bryan Edwards. It just seems to be every day. It's just nonstop. And if you don't know, if you haven't seen, go look at his highlights. I mean, highlights are kind of misleading, but while he was at South Carolina, he left as the leading receiver in receptions, in receiving yards. His 22 receiving touchdowns are second most in school history. Does anybody know who the South Carolina quarterback was? I have no idea. Like, I don't think that it was anything that exceptional. He was a guy that just thrived being, the alpha in a mediocre offense. And, while he might not be the alpha, because there will be other pieces there, ultimately, if this ends up this year, and especially, I know I'm definitely thinking ahead too, I think that this offense potentially is going to funnel through him. So I'm all aboard. I think I took him in my home keeper league, and I took him super early. People were like, who is that? So.
Oh, they're going to know. They're going to know at the end of this year who that is. We just talked about on the Drinking and Talking Fantasy podcast, my aversion that I've been talking about with rookie wide receivers applies to just about everybody besides Bryan Edwards. One, because of where his draft cost is, but two, because of his opportunity in that offense. It's just immense.
Heck yeah. I'm so excited.
So if I can't find any highlights of Bryan Edwards, is there a workout tape that you can direct me to so I can fawn over it?
Yeah, shot through the bushes with a really grainy iPhone, but if you're okay with that quality, I can get you one tomorrow.
As long as it's iPhone 6 or better, send it over.
Okay, perfect. Do you mind heavy breathing in the background at all? I just have to ask your preferences.
Is this now an ASMR podcast? Bryan Edwards, he's gonna be the X receiver, and he's gonna, by all accounts, someone me and Jake obviously know, being Packer fans, he's been compared to Devontae Adams by Derek Carr. I mean, that there's no more glowing recommendation. He's a little bit bigger than Adams is, but he's absolutely going to have every opportunity with his size and speed profile. And he's going super late. His ADP is starting to correct a little bit now that the buzz is out there coming into, we're obviously right in the midst of draft season here. So, he's going to start getting drafted more and more. He's going to be that hot waiver wire, pickup before games are played next week. So, Bryan Edwards, he's just an easy lottery ticket right now, and people obviously that are sharp are going to be snapping him up and reaping the benefits. I mean, say what you want about the Raiders and Derek Carr, but he can absolutely make Bryan Edwards a fantasy relevant, certainly wide receiver 3 ceiling, potentially more should everything work out, but
fingers crossed.
And then we're going to go, my breakout guy is going to be DJ Chark. Now he's a guy I absolutely love DJ Chark. Just his alpha profile that when the Jaguars are going to be down in a lot of games, I mean, it doesn't really take, super analysis to figure out if, a team's going to be down, they're going to be throwing a lot. But when you look at when the Jags were down, Chark's targets per game rose by over 1.5. All of his counting stats rose as well, to a difference about 56 fantasy points per game versus when they were winning, and they weren't winning a lot. But also their pass rate in 2019 was one of the most dramatic based on game script too. When they were leading, they were only throwing the ball 45%, and then it jumped up to about 63% when they were losing. Not a lot should change in that offense when you're talking about Minshew. Now you've got Chenault, taking some of the passing work, and then they're going to move him around the field too, potentially Tyler Eifert. But DJ Chark should. The one thing he does have to work on, I will say, is his consistency. He scored over 16 PPR points in 7 games, but he also had under 10 points in fewer in 8 games. So when I look at a breakout, and when this came up, early in the show, talking about guys you can envision, going, a couple rounds higher next season, DJ Chark is absolutely one of those guys that could be, a fringe wide receiver 1 that could still be a value in the third round just based on, him progressing in his offense and realizing the talents he has. And who knows, with the Jaguars, they could be in line to get Trevor Lawrence. That could be an upgrade over Minshew, and that's going to just paint a more rosy picture on the Jaguars offense. They've got some passing game weapons to work with that could really benefit a rookie quarterback down the line. But Minshew is absolutely capable of, getting Chark, up to being a wide receiver 1 this season. So that's my guy there, DJ Chark, and I'm smashing him anywhere I can get him in the 4th round. Sometimes he gets down to the 5th round.
Yeah, man. 3rd-year breakout coming up. 2nd year. I mean, it was a 2nd round pick. I remember when they took him, and I just didn't know much about him, and I'm just like, all right, whatever. Like, no, nothing. And then last year, man, it flashed so hard for the first half of the season, and I thought, and it was actually the Majukes were the ones that I kind of corrected me. I felt like he had this like hot start for the first 8 games and then just did nothing, but that's definitely not the case. He still did have some good games. And talk about an offense funneling through someone. Like, there's no one else. It's him, and in the red zone, probably Tyler Eifert, and that's it. That's as far as I'm concerned. So I'm excited for it.
They're going to throw 800 times this year, and DJ Chark is going to get about 350 of those. It's going to be wild.
It's going to be fun. Definitely.
Yep. Absolutely. So we've gone through the wide receivers. Gary, why don't you tell us about your breakout tight end?
My last second pivot so that I was not talking about the Dolphins again. Yeah, I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. To me, Dallas Goedert is not someone that I was going in on it being like, this is going to be a breakout. I was always poo-pooing on Kevin, who was really high on him early in the offseason. But
that's why I'm so interested right now.
There's nothing else. There's no one else to throw to. There's just no one. There's Zach Ertz, there's Djax, and there's Greg Ward. And so Dallas Goedert, he's going to be there. He is going to be catching passes. And I was debating on actually just in my league debating between Jarwin and Dallas Goedert. And I was looking at their numbers and I was like, why would Dallas Goedert has like a floor in like a half-point league. We'll just go with that. A floor of probably like 8 points on a weekly basis. Like, that's pretty fantastic considering he's the second on the lead, on the team. And I mean, this is obviously at the back part of the season, but weeks 11 through 17, this is a half point. He had 11, 5, 10, 6, 8, 20, and 9. Like, that's a pretty good output for someone that, I mean, I just got him on waivers because nobody really wants him because they just think he's a tight end 2 on a team, but he's going to have significantly more targets. And I think the loss of the offensive linemen, as we talked about kind of last week, they're such a huge problem that I could see Ertz and Goddard getting peppered with targets pretty quickly, especially if Sanders' hamstring doesn't, get any better anytime soon. But I'm sure that I think Sanders is actually on the mend already. I'm just excited to see. And if we're talking about breakouts, right? What if Ertz doesn't get paid and all of a sudden Goddard becomes that guy? I know we're talking about redraft right now, but like, they could start to integrate him even more with the idea that next year they might not have Ertz. And I think just last point, and I'm going to take this from Kevin, he graded out as the best run blocking tight end in the NFL. He was better than Kittle. I believe you told me that.
Since he's been in the league, since he's been in the league, his combined run blocking grade is second and over Kittle.
There we go. I butchered it, but I appreciate the assist.
That's impressive, though. Do you think that there has been a suppression of Goddard's ADP because everybody's been expecting the Ertz extension to happen, and now that it hasn't happened, people are like just nervous? Is that why he's that, or is it just people just assume because Zach Ertz is there? Well, there's no reason in looking at the tight end 2 on the team.
It's just that. I mean, when was the last time a tight end 2 was relevant? It was Hernandez and Gronk. I can't think of another team.
Yeah, that's pretty
Tough.
That's pretty fair. Yeah, it might be just something as, black and white as that. The it doesn't make you feel good when you take the second tight end on a team.
Yeah.
So just
So
it could
that's
be
all
just
the
something.
Tyler Higbee truthers out there. Oh,
Oh, hey now.
I actually don't care about the Rams tight ends at all, but I just know that a lot of people do very much, and so it's easy to poke. It's very easy.
Johnny Munt is my tight end to not Gerald Everett.
You just made me drop an F-bomb just because you were talking about Johnny Munt. Again.
I have to work in a Johnny Munt reference. I think that's starting to become a bit.
So I'm happy. I'm excited to see what Goddard can do. And honestly, if you're streaming tight end, go for it. And they play Washington, so I'm gonna go for it since Washington should be a kind of a layup for the passing offense.
Oh my God, I'm still laughing about that.
All right, Kevin, I'm gonna have you go first, and then we'll have Jake take us out.
Sounds like a plan. So my guy who I've been talking about almost ad nauseum, as well as, in addition to Dallas Goedert, is Herb Smith Jr. So he's one of my biggest bets as far as breaking out. Good friend of all of ours, Sam Wallace over at RotoViz, did an article, I think it was last week, about streaming tight ends, and made some really good points about him. Herb Smith, pronouns pal, having the third easiest schedule from weeks 1 to 8, but also going deeper in and talking about the breakouts for the tight end position. When you see a guy who plays his rookie season at age 21, it's double the rate of a breakout versus guys who enter at 22, 23, 24. He's going to be 22 this year. Right now, all camp reports are indicating, when they play 12 personnel, Irv Smith is going to be detached on the, off the line. He's going to be running a lot of routes in that offense. Right now, as I see it, him and Kyle Rudolph are pretty much ships passing in the night. That's one of my favorite things to say, but it's pretty true. And then I look at he was the highest graded tight end among 2019, the tight end class, who saw over 40 targets, sixth best catch rate among all qualifying tight ends. I think the sky's the limit for Irv Smith in that offense. He has a very real chance to be the non-Adam Thielen target leader in that offense, just based on Justin Jefferson maybe not having the greatest camp and being maybe worked into that offense instead of just being out there day one. Maybe over Cook as well as far as targets go. But yeah, I'm absolutely in on Irv Smith. Give me the talent all day.
Yeah.
I like that.
What Jake thinks. Yeah.
To add on to that, honestly, both of those tight ends in that offense, I'm actually really keen on. Even Kyle Rudolph this year, I'm really kind of big on Kyle Rudolph. For a lot of the things that you said can apply to Rudolph's situation, but not his talent. Smith has the talent, obviously, way, way heads and shoulders above what Kyle Rudolph can do as a pass catcher. So it's just a matter of, does it click early enough this year for Irv? And if it does, then holy hell, you're locked into a guy that's top 10 feels even like because it's tight ends. Right. But the guy has more than that upside. It's just, does it click in early enough for him is really the only question that I even have for him, because the opportunity is just mind-boggling there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody can get him the ball, it's certainly Kirk Cousins, Mr. I'm not afraid to die. Ride or die Kirk Cousins. That's all I'm gonna say about that one.
Oh, that was interesting.
Mine's taking tinfoil on the grill. Kirk Cousins. All right, Jake.
Yeah, let's round it out.
All right, I'll be as round as possible here. I'm going with Blake Jarwin as my breakout for tight end. It's just a matter for me of opportunity in that offense. I think that offense is going to be really leaning on the passing game more than people might expect, I guess, with the new regime coming in. They were already just under 600 pass attempts last year. Obviously, you're switching coaching staffs. You're bringing in Mike McCarthy. Kellen Moore's still there for some level of consistency, which is nice. I like to see that.
Yeah.
I also like to look back as a Packers homer and understand that a lot of Mike McCarthy's offenses have been very heavily leaning on the pass. So I do expect that to maintain. Whether they hit that 600 mark this year or not, I can't say. I would lean that they will, honestly, just with the amount of people that they have there. And I think that people are looking at the amount of weapons there as a detriment to Blake Jarwin. I personally don't see it that way. I actually see it as somewhat advantageous for him because he's not an excellent athletic dude. And I think he actually needs more of those guys there to make things easier for him, which is what's going to happen this year with those other three great wide receivers there. He's very athletic in that he can beat a linebacker really great in the middle of the field. And he's certainly not the quickest guy, but he can actually beat guys in the middle of the field like that. So he should see plenty of targets. I know that there is worried about how many targets are going to be available for him. I don't know if you guys are really into the whole vacated targets thing. Some people are very anti that. Some people are very for it. I just look at it as Jason Witten and his 83 targets are gone. Old man Witten and his old creaky knees are out of that place. And if he can finish his tight end 11 in a slightly different offense, but still similar enough offense, I don't see why Blake Jarwin cannot at least do that. And the dude is sitting here at tight end 19 right now. Look, there's a gaggle of guys kind of late for tight end that I'm interested in, but he has the most security for me outside of maybe Jack Doyle, who I thought about bringing up here. But yeah, Randall Cobb, 83 targets gone. So what does the rookie get? Well, he might get that, but then there's 83 targets left over from Jason Witten. So I don't know. I'm digging him quite a bit this year.
Yeah, I completely. It's the constant debate in my leagues where I kind of have a later tight end is always if they're available, just kind of rotating through and just wondering, is it going to be Blake Jarwin or not? And I think if you're streaming, he's somebody that, and hopefully you happen to get him when he hits and then you can have him for a bit. But if he keeps being on the waiver wire, like there are so many matchups that's going to work out. My concern will just be where's the consistency? There's touchdowns to go around, and I'm curious to see what his yardage floor will be like on, week to week, given that we know, he had his 3 touchdown game at the end of 2018. I think that's what everybody remembered it for. Was that 2019? God, I have no idea.
COVID screwed us all up.
Yeah, I don't. I honestly don't know. It must be 2019. God, that was last season. Okay, but I love the pick.
Yeah, I like Jarwin too. I'll subscribe to the vacated targets. I'm not Peter Howard. I'm not going to poo-poo it. Clearly there's opportunity there. I think they absolutely just crush over 600 attempts in that offense with what they have. Knowing Mike McCarthy, that can make 3 fantasy receivers relevant as well as a tight end. Say what you want. Mike McCarthy really hasn't had a tight end in his offense as talented since Jermichael Finley. So now we're looking at Blake Jarwin, who people want to say, yeah, okay, he's 5th in the pecking order. There's also how many targets left? 170 something between Cobb and between Witten. Not all of those are going to go to CeeDee Lamb. I think, we're looking at we're looking at over 100 targets, I would say, for Cooper and for Gallup. I think Lamb straddles 100, could go a few under, could go a few over. And then you're looking at a guy like Jarwin. And I think Ezekiel Elliott's pass game usage comes down a little bit because we know Mike McCarthy has used, he hasn't just used one back. Now he hasn't had the same, he hasn't had a running back like Ezekiel Elliott, but he's had Eddie Lacy and it's been James Starks. He's always had that complement, which Tony Pollard could because he wasn't used as much as he probably should have been last year. So, while you're talking about all these mouths to feed, I think there's definitely room for Jarwin to, he's going to at least destroy his ADP, and get a good return on investment.
You still have to hope a little bit with him. You still have to kind of hope for touchdowns. I mean, as you do with a lot of tight ends, that's where they're going to make their bread and butter. I just feel like there's enough opportunity in that type of offense. And I love that you said the thing about like Mike McCarthy's never had, a tight end like that since he's never had a healthy tight end since Jermaine Finley, who's been able to do that. He's had quality guys. He had Martellus Bennett, who he utilized very well. I actually wrote an article about this, about like, you guys stop it with the hate towards McCarthy and the tight ends, because it's not his fault. It's just these dudes. Jared Cook got a lot of heavy utilization in his offense. It's just these guys haven't stayed on the field. So I'll be very interested. Obviously, Jarwood doesn't have any health issues that we know of right now that we should be concerned about. So if he can stay out there, I'm hoping, the guy gets 6 touchdowns, and I don't see a reason why he can't be a top 10 option.
Yeah, absolutely fair.
I have one last thing about our breakouts, and that is you're welcome, because I honestly wanted to do Jimmy, Raheem, and Debo because like they actually all fit in this, and I didn't. So you're welcome. But they all completely fit here, so I won't go into it, but because we all know where it's at. And then for tight end, like I said, I was going to do Gesicki, but I didn't because apparently I talk about the Dolphins and Niners too much. For some fucking reason.
You could have talked about Gesicki. That would have been fine. I
had already done
Breida,
so yeah.
You didn't want to double up. I respect that. I respect you holding it back until just now when you had to let it go.
Don't run away from your feelings, Gary.
I mean, I think when we planted our flags, I think I planted my flag in Gesicki. So it worked out fine. I was so bummed when I didn't get him in my most recent, like in my main draft. I just you always think that you can see these guys. And then it's actually really kind of the important lesson for anybody going into their drafts is like, you think you can get these guys, but ultimately, like if you want these guys, ADP be damned, especially when you're in the like 7+ round. It makes no difference. Just get your damn guy. I'm like gutted that I don't have Gesicki. So, but is what it is. So,
it's funny. It's funny because I'm in an FFPC best ball right now with a few people. And so I took Mark Andrews in the second, and I've been waiting for tight end. And I can't even get OJ Howard or Tyler Eifert in the 13th round. Wow. And we're talking, this is a 28 round draft.
That's nuts.
I couldn't even get, I had to take Dawson Knox.
You're going to have to pick Holly Waring, who I thought about. I talked about you guys.
We did it.
I almost wanted to throw him in here just to really F with you guys. Holly Waring, tight end for the Houston Texans, who his metrics are bonkers, and Deshaun really likes his tight ends more than people think. But you might have had to rely on a guy like him in that draft.
But you know what? I took Knox, and I'm going to take another tight end, someone who potentially might be the tight end 1 in Green Bay.
Oh my God. You're going to take
Big Bob Tonyan.
Is it a homer pick? Yes. Do I still love it? Of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. 77 yards per target. I'll take it.
Do you actually believe in Waring? Like, or is that I can't tell if that's a joke or not, because honestly, like they have so many young tight ends.
I was too effusive about him early on just because I'm gaga over his metrics and his draft capital and like all that. And the way that like they used their tight ends early in the offense last season actually was very advantageous for a guy like him to come in. It's overreaching by a lot because he's essentially a rookie tight end. Yeah. But I mean, he's like ADP 1,000 because why not?
Yeah, not even rostered in as many dynasty leagues as you would imagine.
But I feel
also, like he's not been playing football for like 2 years, right?
It's been a late blooming situation.
Yeah,
for Waring.
Yeah, he's being drafted as the tight end 4 among Houston Texans tight ends right now.
That seems rude and flagrant. But I feel like I had to get my takedown now so that I could come back to it 3 years from now and really gloat.
Keep them receipts, brother.
Yeah. When we're famous and you're famous by association because you came on our pod where you dropped the Waring news.
Damn right. All right, Jake, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Again, tell us where we can find you on the World Wide Webs.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This was an absolute blast, as I expected it to be, and it lived up to all of my internal hype. But you guys can find me at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter. You can find the podcast Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter, and around.
Literally around, just hanging out.
Yep.
You might just find this podcast just sitting on your shelf or something and forget that you put it there.
Back alleys in every small city.
Right next to where you left the remote. Yep. All right. So that's our last off-season pod, Gary. How does that feel?
We're not doing one next week?
We are. Well, off-season, because next week we'll be in the midst of, week 1 action.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
Because the National
crazy.
Football League.
Yeah.
What we're talking about.
What?
Football. Huck it, chuck it, football.
I can't wait for the EPL.
I hate you. So, so next week we're going to have Jen Piacenti coming on with us to talk some week 1 fantasy foosball.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Gonna be fun. Jake, again, appreciate you, brother. Always good to talk to you and converse with you, and we'll definitely do it down the road in the future. And Gary, anything else before we sign off?
No, man, I really appreciate it. It honestly was awesome having you here, and I just can't believe it's about to be football. I didn't actually know if the season was going to happen, and here we are about to embark on what I expect to be an actual full season. So.
Fingers crossed on that. So,
yes,
for Gary Haddow and Jake Trowbridge, I'm Kevin Tompkins. This has been Fighting Chance Live. You didn't get a super awesome intro this time, so we can at least outro with our theme music and everything like that, like some kind of wrestler, I guess. I'm going to shut up and stop talking. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance?